What's going on, hi, friends. Oh, jeez. Hey, guys, what's up? Welcome to another day of Dee's house, I guess. So, what happened last time? Well, fuck, man. A lot of things happened. Our writing session was pretty good. We got 9 pages. I don't really know how long it took me. All I know is it was like an all-day thing. I just kind of kept going to it, writing and leaving it, and going to it and writing and leaving, and going to read a book for a little bit, coming back, writing, It was one of those kind of sessions that it took a long-ass time. But I find that me taking breaks, I don't know, not even really breaks, because I don't feel like a break. It feels like I get too distracted in my head. And all of a sudden I'm cleaning a living room. I'm like, oh, Jesus, we're writing. What are we doing? I gotta go back and write and stuff. Like, that's kind of the way that it seems to work the best for us when it comes to writing. We were setting up the scenes of the book's ending. Things kind of happened in a way. I went with it, and it was a little bit horrible. It was a little dark. And man, and just even for a first draft, it was pretty fucking dark. I can't imagine when I add all of the like ambiance and the atmosphere and the emotions and shit. Like, oh my god, dude. It has a very twisted, dark ending. This second book does. Phew. But anyway, from that point, there's going to be this big climactic final battle. I've never had one of those really. So we're about to. I don't know if we can do that today. I'm not really sure because I don't know what's going to happen. But yes, we are on what could possibly be the final chapter. This whole time I was saying I'm getting to that point where the big climax is coming. Well, I've passed the climax, and now we're into this big final battle, final chapter. And from this point, it will decide some of the things that are to come in book 3. And as it was all happening, that like me setting up, there's gonna be this big fight, and there's gonna be this fucking thing going on, I just had this other character's story that just fit right into it like a glove, and I was like, oh my god, I guess we're meant to do this because this just fits perfect. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. And then once that's done, Eris and Nakum and all their main story is over. I still have yet to do Aya, who's like this other character who's like way over here in her own little world. I have yet to finish her or even barely start it. So the book's not really done, but technically it's done. The important stuff. Her story is definitely important, but again, like I said, it's hard for me to write her story because she's in the political sphere, and I'm very bad about that kind of stuff and how that works and all that junk. So I have to do research before I really get into her things. So that's kind of cool, man. Like we're almost done, and I want to say when we're done writing this, the first draft of book 2, we're going to take a bit of a break. So we won't do these writing series videos for a little bit. Just to kind of like fuck, because this has been like a lot, Not just like writing the story, but just also having to like sit here in stream of consciousness, talk to people, I guess, about God knows whatever the fuck happens in that session, Sometimes it's quite a bit. I mean, shit. I made one video where I showed how it could feel, just the first attempt, the second attempt. Like, that's what it is sometimes. It's just like, God damn, dude. What the fuck do I talk about? I have no idea. I feel like I'm being, like, going on stage, like, okay, now talk about something, like, well, like, if we think about egregores, I have to, like, sit there and make shit up for a while. Which is great, because it encourages and hones my improv skills. But at the same time, goddamn, dude. Once we finish the first draft, we'll have it all done with, right? And then I think the videos will just kind of go into the Inner Thoughts series and maybe a little bit more about the lore. I'll kind of walk into that shit. I'll be able to do that with some free time. And once we pick the book back up, do a rewrite, whatever I decide, or copy it over to the computer and then start adding stuff, then we'll kind of show that process. Then I can show you a little bit more in depth, like the research process. Like, you know, if I'm copying it over and then there's a scene and I'm really thinking about it, like, well, I really need to like discover this concept, or I need to look at this person more in depth. I'll kind of show you the process of it and how exactly I do that and how painful that is. Jesus Christ. And all the questions I ask and all the skepticism and the doubt. It's so heavy. But a good example, like what's going to come. Yeah, so if you go way back in the channel's history and you find what's called the podcast, it's called The Beginning World Building. Each one of those videos is me sitting down and thinking about stuff. So like, you know, the Valand and also philosophy, Martis Continued, the Monarchs, the Haven Society, the Druid Exchange, the Forgotten King main plot. Like, that's literally like what that session feels like, where I literally just hit record and I fucking went. You know, and they're rough. They're really rough because they were not meant for an audience. It was just like, this was for me because I used to work on night shift and I would have all this free like time. So I like, if I record myself trying to figure this out, I'll just listen back to it while I'm working, and that way I can keep thinking about it while I'm doing this faggot job. And that's what I used to do, just kind of do my little job at work, you know, lifting, doing all this shit, and then listening to myself talking about, you know, like maybe the Forgotten King isn't exactly what we thought he was, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, and I'll like take notes and stuff as I'm listening and put them in my pocket. And that's what those were for, the podcast videos of the World Building series. I don't do that anymore, like I said, because I take breaks. That's when I got so involved in the world that I forgot to live in the real one, and it was a whole ass thing. But we're going to eventually get back into that again. So, because there will be problems that need to be solved at any point when you're doing that writing. So, yes, I have this framework of a world sitting here, and I'm writing a story where I can set it in this framework. But sometimes, like, when you're setting these parts together, they don't quite fit. Like, if you ever, like, rebuild something, or if you're constructing anything, it's like, oh, this doesn't quite fit. Like, I don't know what's wrong with this. We got to relook at this. And you take it apart, and then you realize that it's got to kind of lock into itself a lot better. That's what those sessions are like. It's like, how can I make this story fit better in this world? And there are times where maybe a whole chapter, I'm just going to have to rewrite the thing. Because it's like, that doesn't really make sense. Like, with this lore, I forgot, you know, the bearded pygmy were this, and we've said that in the book, so we got to change this. And sometimes it's like, you know, when you repair a vehicle or something, and you think you fix this part, and you realize, well, way down there's another problem that's causing this problem. And from that point, there's all this rust. This whole line's got to be replaced. And then once we can get to that, then we can put the compressor, blah, blah, blah. That, it's like a car. It's always like that. So when you're doing the writing, sometimes you might have to replace multiple chapters because you accidentally went with the wrong kind of lore. And that can be a problem, but it's easily fixed. It just takes fucking time. And it's worth it. I mean, eventually what I'm going to have to do is, when I feel book 2 is, you know, somewhat to like an okay standard, I have to make sure it falls in line with book 1. I have to read all of book 1, and like, I might even have to edit parts in book 1 to like, okay, well, book 2, he mentioned this. We need to make it a little bit more of a thing in book 1. If it's traumatizing him this much in 2, then it needs to in book 1. So I have to kind of edit that and, you know, add spots in and shit and make sure the story arc is growing the way I want it to. And that's not even including book 3. Fucking A, dude. But that's kind of like the point I said when it's like, you know, for me, 1 and 2 and 3 need to be fully written and done before I say, okay, I think the story's good. Let's put them out there. Just because the arc will make more sense. Because I don't want inconsistencies where in book 1, he made it seem like he was going to be this, but then in book 3, none of that even happened. This is confusing. You know, I can totally understand how confusing that would be. So I just got to make sure it all fits. And I mean, mind you, I'm doing this without an editor, so I don't really have someone that's got skills in this shit. It's just me sitting doing this by myself. So, you know, we'll see what happens from that point. But it is pretty exciting to know that on book 2 we're almost done with the first write. That's kind of cool, man. It really is. We're getting there, and as I think back at the story, so it's like, this is how it feels. With the first write, the first draft, it feels like a dream. Because the section's kind of, like, how did we get here from there? It's kind of foggy. And it feels like the story's being told in a dream because it's like kind of fuzzy on the edges. I don't know exactly where we are. I can't really see vividly what's going on. I can only concentrate on the small scenes and like things that are going on, and it's really hard for me to zoom out and look around the world. And that's like the first write. And sometimes the things they say, I don't know if that's exactly what they mean or not, or if this is what's really going on, or was that just an illusion? I don't know. And then but you have it. It's like I have this foggy glimpse of an idea. That's my coined term I give it. From that point, it's like, okay, let's analyze this more and let's kind of set it down here and we'll copy it over. And once it's on this computer here, that's when the construction begins. That's when we begin to like move chapters around and rearrange orders of things, or just totally delete scenes or add whole new ones. Once that's happening, then we can start adding environments. Then we could start just like, after he's done talking, let's talk about the scenes a little bit. Let's kind of explore them. Like, what's going on around him? What's the world look like? And, how exactly are they dressed? What do they look like? Because, you ignore all that stuff. And you're just putting in color. You're putting in human elements. And from that point, once you feel like the story's good, the environment's good, and you like all that stuff, then you gotta do the grammatical shit. That's a whole ass thing that you gotta figure out too, and this is a lot, But it's a slow, gradual process, and I think as you do that, you have to constantly have a source to kind of go to with these things. And so like, the source can just be source material. So if like you're exploring, if your character's going into weird occultic shit, like we'll find some source books and just kind of dip your toe into it and see if this is what indeed you want him to do. And if it is, what are you mirroring? Or this little guy here, a historical thing. Like, like look at the way history played itself out. Look at the way that people look at it. So you can kind of see how you do it. Or if you have your own fantasy world, well, you have a plethora of information if you sat there and worked on your world building. So you got to study that. Go back through your notes again. Go back through all those files or whatever you may have and see how it fits in that world that you're constructing. Like, okay, does this necessarily fit? Because I remember I talked about the mountain folk a long time ago, and they were like this. But the way I described in this novel, they're totally separate. So what does that mean? Is this a cultural thing, or like, which one do I like better? If I do like some elements of my original concept, then I need to add them here. So let's rethink about them. Let's reshape those scenes where they're in it, so we can give them culture. So it doesn't feel like you're talking to the same robot over and over again. There's a lot of like fucking things like that to do when it comes to this shit. I could tell you that kind of stuff, but at the same time, I don't know if I could tell you like, and here's how you know when you're done, because I don't know what that's like. I have that tendency to be like that guy in the studio that just keeps adding and adding and adding and changing. Like, come on, man, like eventually you gotta stop yourself. I keep saying it to myself and probably to the camera all the time, but like I am astounded that I'm even doing any of this. Like, I'm a writer. This is weird. This is not who I thought I was gonna be growing up. I'm sure if you saw me in person, you wouldn't think that either. I'm wearing Red Wings shit, wearing like plaid. I love wearing plaid, and I don't look like a guy who's like sitting there like, yes, I'm at home contemplating consciousness and the idea of the spectrums that we walk into. What is the astral plane? And I don't know if I look like that guy when I walk around in public, but I wasn't that guy when I was young. You know what I mean? Like, I was definitely just a simpleton, if you will. And this has just kind of all happened. And I don't want to say accident, but I did not think I was going to be this. Not think that. At most, I didn't take seriously what it is to be someone that explores self and being someone that is trying to look for these things. I thought I was just making this fantasy book. First, I thought it was a fantasy world. I was like, I'm just making this fun little world. I don't know. What's the worst that could happen? And I was walking into it, and I was just kind of making. I didn't know the ramifications of this. I didn't know how much the mind has control of itself, and what I'm actually doing inside the mind, how I'm structuring it to a consciousness idea. And I'm structuring the way my mind works to a fake world to use as a platform. From that point, I can go out and explore these like fucking strange astral planes and shit in here and find connections and stuff. And not only that, but tell a story that has a warning to it, or that has a moral to it, or has a downfall, something that like, oh shit, like man, things can really go south in these times or whatever. I never knew that that's what I was supposed to do, you know? This shit just kind of all slowly happened in its own way. And when I've been lately looking into the idea of the egregore, I've been kind of seeing, okay, like conscious ideas, thought forms that manifest themselves into entities, and these entities can kind of rule over you in these group settings, and they can manipulate and control people, and they can get you to kind of stay inside whatever this concept happens to be. I don't know. From family to religion to country and all that shit. And I was like, okay, so I'm alone and I'm doing this kind of thing, and I feel in some sense led by a being. Can you have this thought form manifest into from just within one person? But no, because it's two other people are involved in this book. And I just kind of feel, I guess, like I was saying in the last video, I replaced it with a god. I was like, well, that's a god, and then this is what it wants me to do. I don't even know if that's true or not. I don't even know if our concept of God is accurate anymore. The more I'm like looking into egregores, the more I'm looking into religion, spirituality, and looking into self at the same time, the more I'm like, I don't even know if gods exist in the way that we've ever thought they existed. Or at least mainstream, like what they'll tell you. It wasn't until I started dipping my fucking toe into this weird esoteric shit that I'm like, this makes a lot more sense to me than anything I've ever heard before. You know, part of me is scared of that because I'm like, well, I don't want to get caught up in doing rituals and pentagrams and shit. Like, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to just like find myself. So it might just be, this is just the part I'm walking past this area right now and I'm looking at it, but we're still moving forward. I think what I'm kind of doing on accident here is creating my own philosophy, because I'm looking at all this shit, I'm window shopping at life, and I'm seeing all this stuff, and I'm picking up some things, like I kind of, you know, there's something to it. I could fix this, go into antique shops, grab a thing, like I could work on that. I take all this stuff, I sit down, I'm fucking making it, and I'm like, there's something here that's more me than it is them, and I have to extract all their bullshit out of it so I can put my stuff in, and I'm reconstructing ideas and concepts into my books, which kind of have subtly their own philosophical ideas. I don't like plan on that. That's not like something I'm like, I thought okay, let me say it like this. I didn't set out to do that. That's just kind of what it became. Look outside, see another, want to find yourself, but don't just copy paste people. Find your own way to it. And if I look at some of the writings that I've done, because I can't remember everything, there's a lot of time after times where time kind of sits there for a moment. When things are happening, a character says something, there's always this weird time between their interaction or thinking. A lot of things appear from darkness. I was noticing that about my writing. A lot of the times, like, people will just appear from the shadows and into the light, and they'll be there. A lot of the times, those same people are domineering, and they're very dominant in their presentation and in the way they speak to you. There's a lot of parts where, I always say, people want you to, interact. They want you to have an opinion. They want to tell you what you should do. And there's a lot of scenes of just quiet contemplation. There's a hell of a lot of scenes of the characters doubting themselves and doubting the world around them, and like, what if this isn't what I thought it was? There's also a lot of scenes of the overall world that these guys are in. It's chaotic. And it's very clear that all my characters, the way I perceive them, have zero control over their world. They could have these opinions, they could have this, like, this is my thought form, I believe this. And it just gets swept away like that, and all of a sudden they're just left standing there going like, I thought I was fine. Now, okay, I guess I'm not allowed to be here anymore. And a lot of the times in the stories, all the characters, no matter who the fuck they are, will have their shit taken from them. And they'll all be left standing there in their own shadow, just kind of like, fuck, man, like, what do I do now? And from that point, it was essential for me to say, like, okay, if you're standing in the shadow of your own doubt, if all you knew was swept from you, like, what's the first fucking thing this character is going to want to do? And sometimes it's revenge, and sometimes it's find knowledge or truth. Other times it's find this, like, what is God? Or even how to be a good servant, how to be a good friend, how to be a good mentor, leader, whatever, like, their fucking thing was. It feels like you have to strip them from everything, and from that point, here you go. What are you going to do now? How are you going to figure this situation out? What's going on? It's tough, man. Like, I look more and more into the philosophy, and like I said, I'm not really analyzing my own work, so I'm not doing justice some of the things in it. That's for someone else to do, because for me, this is just how I think. And I just notice a lot of lack of control and a lot of fear and a lot of being lost. And not only that, but like being kind of an idiot. As in, the characters, none of them have a lot of, like, for the most part, for a while at least, none of them have a lot of confidence in anything. So yeah. That's that. We shall see what comes from today. Whether we write or not is irrelevant anymore. Anyway, we're going to go off and we're going to pop and we're going to write, hopefully. And hopefully soon enough, we will be done with the first write. But we'll see.